Welcome to the CCFR Radio Podcast, your source for news, updates, and stories from the CCFR.
Hey everybody, welcome to episode 157 of the CCFR Radio Podcast. I'm your host, 𝐌𝐞𝐫𝐿. Thanks for joining me again. Great to see you all back after the holiday season, after Christmas, after Hanukkah, you name it. Hopefully you had a great one. You had some time to take some time off and spend some quality time with friends and family. I did a little bit of that, which I'm thankful for. But anyway, oddly enough, we've got lots of stuff to talk about. But before we get started, I just want to thank the sponsors of the CCFR Radio Podcast. A huge thank you goes out to our great friends over at the Saskatchewan Rivers chapter of Safari Club International. They do a lot of great work over there, including supporting the CCFR and the CCFR Radio Podcast. Check out all their great work at SaskRiversSCI.com. That's SaskRiversSCI.com. And thank you so much to our great friends over at Vortex Canada. They continue to support the CCFR podcast and the CCFR. Can't say enough about them. Check out all their great products at vortexcanada.net. That's vortexcanada.net. Vortex, the force of optics. Need a new boomstick? Bullseye North is Canada's shooting superstore and a proud supporter of the CCFR. With a wide selection of guns and top trending gear for any shooter, they have what you need. Plus, free shipping over $250, which includes ammo, or flat rate shipping of $17 under $250. Some conditions apply. Subscribe to their weekly newsletter to get first access to the hottest deals. CTOMS has been a provider of trauma care training to military and police in Canada for nearly 2 decades. Now this emergency medical training is being made available to a wider audience through CTOMS online courses. Go to ctomsacademy.com and use promo code CCFR30 to get 30% off. That's ctomsacademy.com. All right, we are back. So, as I mentioned, I'm going to give you that list of everything that we did in 2023 that I promised. And I think to show you how, like, it took a couple hours to compile it. And because we do projects, we do a lot of stuff, right? And we do projects, and then for me, like, it's strange. I have this photographic memory in like all these different ways. And then I'm like an Alzheimer's patient in other ways, right? So there's a lot going on up here apparently. But it took a couple hours to go back and be like, oh yeah, that's right, we did that. And how I did, I just want to kind of share this with you. So I'm a really busy person for a number of reasons. And the way that I run my life is I use these binders, right? These coil bound notebooks I get from whatever, Staples, right? Office supply place. And basically how this works, and I just want to show this to you, is each page, like when you open it up, is a week. And it's Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday at the bottom. And then I have like January 9th at the top. So I know this is for the week of January 9th. And the other side is blank, and that's where I keep notes of stuff that's going on this week. So this allows me to be like, if someone says, oh, can we do a call, 4 weeks from now, I'd be like, no problem. And I'll look and I'll be like, yeah, it's open and I can do that. And so I have to run my life through this, or there's no way I would be missing commitments left and right. People would be like, yeah, Rod's the flakiest guy in the world. The only reason I'm not flaky is because I keep track like this. So anyway, to make this list, I went through that, went back through the book to the beginning of the year, beginning of 2023. And then I went through every week and found all this stuff. And I'm reminded of how much work we did this year. The stuff that's not, there's so much stuff that's not on the list. And some of those things are, we brought our online store in-house with a physical location. We do all our pick, pack, and ship now. We don't manufacture t-shirts, but we buy, clothing in bulk, and then we have it printed, and we do all that work ourselves. And we stock up all of our things ourselves. And that made our profit margin increase so that when you buy something from the CCFR, it helps the CCFR more than it used to. It was, I don't know, we probably made like 10% or something before, right? Now it's far better, and it's actually more profitable. Although now we're running a small business, as part of the CCFR. So, but our expenses are, the increased profit more than pays for the expenses. And it helps us give better service, I think, provide better service to you guys when you buy stuff too than it did. And also redoing all of our accounting practices and our infrastructure as an organization, which should have been done probably 2 years ago, but we've been busy fighting the government, right? But anyway, all that stuff, because I'm reminded by all those things when I go through the book. And it's funny because I keep those books. So then, I can look at the one from 4 years ago, right? Like what did day-to-day life look like for me back then? It's kind of an interesting walk through memory lane. But anyway, I went through, I had to go page by page since the beginning of the year because I don't want to, put anything that didn't belong in last year and claim it for last year to you because I'm accountable to you guys as supporters. So anyway, I went through and this is what I came up with. So I'm going to run through this as quick as possible. So in the beginning of last year, we did our original scrapc21.ca project, right? And that was like, 75 memes or whatever. We had material in English and in French. We had explainer videos in English and French. I think we had ended up with 9 of them, like 9 different versions of 3 different ones or whatever it was. And you can go there. We did the download site so that you could grab all of this social media collateral that we had created. And again, that was against Bill C-21 and the amendments. And you could grab it, download it to your own computer and upload them as original posts so that you could do battle in social media, right? Because that's where the CCFR dominates. We dominate the government of Canada on social media, which is awesome. Like if we have achieved anything, that's one thing, I guess, right? That also came with a letter writing campaign, step-by-step instructions, how to find your MP, how to see how your MP voted, all the rest of that stuff on scrapc21.ca. And we also had that poster project, if you remember, where we created 2 informational posters and then offered to send multiple sets of those to any gun store and any range that requested them for free, right? Or compliments of you guys, right? Our supporters. And we said we would do 50 sets. Well, if you remember, we got that 50, I think we got 300 requests and it was within, within 2 days or something like that. And so I said, well, it's really not that expensive. So we filled all of them, right? So we sent out 300 sets of those. Between Tracy and I, we did over 100 mainstream media interviews. And so, and kind of what that looks like is anytime there's a blip on the gun file, right? Guns are in the media, whether it's Bill C-21 or our court case or OICs or shootings in the States or statements made by the Liberals or whatever, right? And then there's a little bit of social media attention. I would do between 3 and maybe 10 interviews. And I would say 2/3 of those tend to be radio and maybe and a lot less, but some TV. And the same thing with Wilson. She gets just as many interviews as I do. So I was looking, I was like, yeah, that's right. We did, 18 together, that time. And it was a month later, we did another 6, each of us kind of thing. So we did lots of radio and we were on CTV, CBC, Global, City TV. And I even did one interview for APTN, the Aboriginal People's Television Network, which was kind of cool this past year. And again, the reason why that's important is we want reasonable people to be representing gun owners. It's really important to have legal access to firearms. We've had that since before Canada was a country, and that needs to continue. And the way that Liberals are approaching this crime, wave that they've created themselves is completely unreasonable and irresponsible. So that message has to get across to mainstream Canadians. So the legacy media still has a place in the home of a lot of Canadians. So we have to make sure that we're present there and our message is people can understand it, right? Like we all understand it very well because we hear it all the time, not mainstream Canadians. They only hear the propaganda. So that's important work. We had our hearing, the trial for our $2.5 million lawsuit against the federal government. And Tracy Wilson attended all day, every day in court. I think it was 7 days in court, and live tweeted what was going on all day long. I think she wrote 250,000 words with her thumbs over those 7 days because there was no cameras in the courtroom. So at least you had a layman's version of like a layman's account of what's going on, who said what, whatever. We transcribed all of those tweets and we had them translated. That was not cheap, but we had them translated into French, and that whole transcription is all on CCFR.ca or firearmrights.ca. And it's a very interesting read. Probably take a couple hours to read it. But if you haven't, you should check that out. So it was good work by Tracy. And of course, we updated propertyjustice.ca. One of the things that we did achieve was amendments G4 and G46 were withdrawn this year. And so there was 2 things there. There was the withdrawing of the amendments, and it was also getting the government to admit that they lied, that they were banning a bunch of hunting rifles, because they relentlessly, bold-faced lied about it the whole time. What? No hunting rifles? And then at the end, they were like, yeah, some rifles that people are hunting with are banned. It's like, really? So those were important things. And I just want to just take a minute to explain this. And I'm gonna sidetrack myself just for a second here. You know, I did a video at the end of last year. It was called An Uncomfortable Conversation, year end, whatever. I don't know, whatever Brandon named it. But in there, it was like, you know, we had, when Bill C-21 passed, people are like, oh, see, we lost. Well, what the heck? This is all useless. It's like, what? Are you kidding me, man? If we hadn't been fighting so hard, Amendments G4 and G46 would have went through like that. The Liberals and the NDP and the Bloc, they had all the votes they needed. If that happened, then the May 2020 gun ban would be enshrined in legislation. You would never get those guns back, like literally ever. I mean, we're still going to have to fight really hard. And it's going to take time to get those guns back if we ever get them back. That's the reality. Sorry. You know, I apologize that reality sucks. Yeah, it does. But those things would have been enshrined in law. Okay? And they're not. So that is a small victory. Yeah, it sucks. Overall, we are losing. But this is how government works. No organization can change a government, but it is absolutely worth fighting. So that was a really important thing. And our mandate is also to delay the government, to disincentivize them from continuing to do things as drastically as they would if there was no opposition. Can you imagine if there was no opposition, if there was no CCFR, right? If the CCFR didn't exist, can you imagine what how emboldened the Liberal government and the NDP and the Bloc would have been? Like really, like be honest with yourself. Like how bad do you think it would have been? It would have been really bad, right? Now, if there was an election, had been called, let's say in November or December, right, last month, Bill C-21 wouldn't have passed. Why? Because of all the fighting that we did and all the effort that we put in, delayed that bill. It took 19 months to pass that bill, which is unheard of to pass legislation. Okay, Bill C-71 took 14 months, and that was a long time. Right back in 2019, it took them 14 months. And they're like, this took a really long time. Well, it took 19 months. We really put it to them. And there was a chance that if there was an election, that Bill C-21 wouldn't have passed. But they held on. They're not going to call an election. 𝐥𝐞𝐫𝐻 needs his pension, you know, whatever. But that's, you know, it's just funny, right? People is like, oh, you know, we lost. Like, well, no kidding. But nobody can stop the government without an election, right? So, you know, that's just our system. Unless you want to tear the whole system down. But that's a completely different conversation. So whatever. We also did National Range Day this year, and it was, I think it was as big as last year, but I would have expected it to be bigger. But we didn't, as an organization, have that much attention to put to National Range Day this year because we were really busy with Bill C-21. But National Range Day is rolling around again this year. We'll put more effort into it again. But I will say that some other organizations, like wildlife federations and stuff, recognize National Range Day. And they encouraged their ranges to have range events, which is really important. And that's the reason why we foot the bill and we did the website and did the logo and trademarked it and told any of these organizations, we will give you a license, unrestricted license to produce all this merch and keep the money yourself to promote the idea of National Range Day because we need it. And it had to be done by an organization that didn't want to put their stamp all over it because it is their work. We took that. We paid for all that stuff. We put the effort in. We developed all of it, the website, the commercials, the intellectual property, and we've already given away the IP to people so that they can make their own merch just so that it gets out there because we need a National Range Day that is a national celebration. So we saw that move forward a little bit, which was really good. We did over 50 Ladies Range Day events. I think the previous year, which would have been 2022, there was 150, I think. But anyway, we didn't have that much attention because again we were fighting legislation and fighting the craziest government in the history of the country. But we still did think about 50 events, more than 50. That's a lot of events. But I'd like to see that go to 100 this year. Really, really valuable work. It's underrated but extremely valuable work. We did an appearance obviously at the Senate. We produced a pre-appearance video. That's never been done before, and I think that went over really, really well. That was very, very valuable. I think the senators that voted for Bill C-21 knew full well that it was a bad bill and they shouldn't have voted for it. But, you know, that's politics, man. But at least they knew, and they knew why it was being opposed. They weren't like, oh, I don't know why everybody's so mad. It's like, yeah, you totally know. And then we revised that whole Scrap C21 project to aim at the Senate, right? So the letter writing, the poster project, all 300 plus poster sets sent across the country to all the people that ordered them in the first place. We did another press conference on Parliament Hill. We also recorded and posted all of the meetings at SecD for C21 and made them available to everybody on Rumble and on YouTube, so that if those, I don't know if they're on Rumble, but anyway, YouTube at a minimum, so at least you will always have access to those meetings. And we made countless important clips out of the total buffoonery that goes on in the legislative process in Canada. So tons of work there. We continue to relentlessly lobby mainly the Conservatives, because they're the party that are going to listen to us. We attended the CPC convention and the Outdoor Caucus annual meeting. We filed an injunction against the government of Canada, again, for trying to run down the deadline to the Amnesty, to make people, try to give them nervous breakdowns or make them angry so they act out or whatever their motivation is. We filed an injunction to force them to renew that amnesty ahead of time. Again, it was the second time that we did that. So we had to make sure that somebody held their feet to the fire. And speaking of holding their feet to the fire, we did that every single opportunity. Every time that they lied or they acted in a disingenuous manner, we were there to hold their feet to the fire, either with a social media campaign or with content, with memes, with videos, you name it. Right? We made sure that they didn't just be like, yeah, we'll do whatever we want to these people and nothing will happen. It's like, oh yeah, you'll get a social media firestorm, and compliments to the CCFR and our supporters and all gun owners. So really, really, really important. If you remember, 𝐌𝐞𝐫𝐻𝐿 lost his minister. I think, was he minister for a year? I'm not sure. And of course, Tlaib Nur Mohammed, talk about disingenuous. Probably one of the most disingenuous, dishonest people I've ever met in my life. I don't know, just telling it the way it is. We made hundreds of videos in the last year. I looked, and we actually, the CCFR as an organization, dominates the government of Canada on social media. We dominate the government itself on social media. And if we've achieved nothing else, that's pretty cool. So, and of course, every 2 weeks we did a podcast. And every 2 weeks, we did a television show on top of that. So anyway, yeah, that's what we did in the last 12 months. So hopefully that explains that. And I don't have to go over that again. It was a bit of work just digging that stuff up. Anyway, all right, I'm going to save the rest of the stuff with our chat with Wilson. So let's get her on the Skype. All right, here we are via Skype. We've got Tracy Wilson of the CCFR. Wilson!
Happy New Year, 𝐿𝐻𝐻.
Happy New Year to you too also.
Thank you. How was your Christmas holidays?
It was all right. We had a pretty good time. Good. It was pretty laid back. I was planning on doing more work than I did, but I'm happy that I took a little bit of time off. Did you get some rest at least?
I did, yeah. I also intended to do a whole bunch of stuff, work stuff, and plug away at it. And I actually just spent some time with the grandson and Colin and my family. And yeah, it was a small Christmas gathering here, but very nice and very, very nice. Very good.
Awesome possum. Okay. Now, let's get into it. We've got an interesting story that's been floating around. I mean, some of these stories have been, kind of making their way around over the holidays. Obviously, we haven't done a podcast or a TV show in that time, so we're kind of catching up on things. But this is such a good story for so many reasons. So there's a deer, some species of nuisance deer on Vancouver Island. That's just off the coast of Vancouver, British Columbia. And this deer apparently, for some reason, either it's too elusive, too smart, too small, I don't know, can't be hunted by regular hunters. We have to bring people in from off-continent to hunt these things for us. So tell us about this story.
Yeah, well, I mean, previously on Vancouver Island, 1,800 of these deer have been killed through traditional hunting methods, right, by hunters. But for some reason, I guess that's not good enough. They say these are nuisance deer that are chewing down the vegetation and it's not able to recover. at a proper rate. So what did they do? They went out and hired foreign contractors to come in on helicopters with semi-automatic assault-style firearms, restricted 223 firearms with suppressors and full-capacity mags, and mow these deer down, which to me is pretty wild. But yeah, I mean, it's not like groceries are so cheap that we shouldn't need to worry about harvesting any of the meat from these animals. But yeah, I don't know. It's upside down world here in liberal Canada.
Yeah. So it's funny because I think there was some messaging from the government about using firearms like that for hunting. Wait a second. I think I have a clip.
Used. The AR-15 example was designed for soldiers to use in a combat situation to kill enemy soldiers. Designed for military use, designed for soldiers to kill soldiers. Soldiers to kill soldiers. We are today ending the availability of weapons that were not designed for hunting or for target shooting. Guns that belong on a battlefield.
These weapons were designed for one purpose and one purpose only: to kill the largest number of people in the shortest amount of time. There is no use and no place for such weapons in Canada.
And that's because those weapons are not for hunting. They aren't for shooting a prairie chicken or scaring off a bear. They're designed for only one purpose: to kill people and to look like they can kill people.
Let me just be very clear. What we have done is we have prohibited weapons that were not designed for hunting or for sports purposes, but rather designed for military use, for soldiers to use in combat. There is no place for those weapons in our civil society.
But we know you do not need a military-grade assault weapon, one designed to kill the largest number of people in the shortest amount of time, to take down a deer. But you don't need an AR-15 to bring down a deer.
So just so I'm clear, the liberal policy is you do not need an AR-15 to hunt a deer until you do.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
You know, these contractors also, out of all the animals that they slaughtered using this method, 20% of them were even the wrong species. So I don't know, just a bizarro story coming out of the West. I don't understand it.
Well, and it cost a pile of money.
Oh yeah.
That, taxpayer. I mean, I think every province is in deficit every year. Mm-hmm. The federal government is so deep in deficit, we may not ever be able to climb out of it ever. And they're just like, yeah, we need to spend $1 million doing this. We can't just have open season for hunters. I mean, hunters would probably, because these deer are small, is my understanding. I'm not an expert in that stuff. Everybody knows
they
that.
are. They're smaller, but they're still edible.
Yeah, and they're edible. But they might even be more of a challenge to hunt. There are hunters across probably across Western Canada that would have traveled to take part in that hunt at no cost to the taxpayer.
Absolutely.
And of course,
there would have been.
Well, yeah, and of course the operative part of this story, the most outrageous part is they let foreigners come in, shoot from helicopters, pay them to do it, let them use prohibited rifles with suppressors, with full capacity magazines. How come these guys couldn't have used 5-round magazines? I mean, who needs a 30-round mag? I mean, and then on top of that, and I don't want to go on and on about it, but it's like people need to understand why this is so outrageous. It's like even the conservation services, oh yeah, now I remember, it was BC and the Yukon, I think. Both had done extensive studies. This was part of the evidence package in our lawsuit against the government, and found that the most effective hunting rifle and also predator defense rifle is the AR-10 platform. An AR-15 platform was the AR-10 in 308. And that's what they equipped their conservation officers with. But hey,
they're ideal.
You don't need an AR-15 to bring down a deer. That is not for hunting. It just doesn't exist. You just don't hunt with it, other than when the government wants to hunt. And people wonder why reasonable people start getting really, really angry. Because they're like, okay, here's the reality. Yep, never mind. Here's the reality. Oh, back to this reality. And they just keep switching back and forth while they accuse everyone else of spreading misinformation. So yes, that's why people get angry. And it's completely reasonable. But anyway.
Yeah.
What a weird story.
Yeah, really weird. And I know it made the rounds on social media and people were just like, what?
Yeah.
And yeah, me included. I'm a hunter. And I was like, what is going on in this country?
But anyway, it just, but that's our government. That's the government that's in place right now. It's just everything is inverted,
Yeah.
Don't ever think you should shoot a deer with an AR-15. Okay, we're going to bring people in from out of the country to shoot deer with AR-15s. Nobody needs a suppressor. We're gonna let them use suppressors. We don't want to disturb everybody.
Oh yeah.
And high capacity magazines. Nobody needs more than 5 rounds. Except
they're spraying and praying out the side of a helicopter. Yeah. Like, come on.
Nobody needs more than 5 rounds, unless they're people we bring in from out of province, out of the country. Then they'll need 30. Like that's the reasoning.
Instead of spending a whole bunch of tax dollars on this, they probably could have made money. I think I probably would have paid to go and do it myself. Yeah. Like, what do you mean? I get to hang out of a helicopter with full capacity magazines and just spray and pray all over the place. And it doesn't even matter if I'm hitting the right species, apparently. Like, what?
Totally.
What?
Totally. And I'm not, and no joke, okay, like completely serious. Like no more joking around. Like I was thinking of like a trip of a lifetime to go down to Texas or Oklahoma or wherever to do that helicopter hunting thing for hogs, because hogs are basically destroying the state, right? So they're trying to attract people from out of the country to come and do this heli hunting, full auto, with an AR-15,
it's crazy.
Right?
Yeah.
Except full auto version, select fire. And it's $5,000 US for, I think you go up twice for an hour each time. So 2 hours. And I'm like, I just can't spend that money. Like I'm not rich, right? So I'm like, I can't justify that. But man, I probably could have squeezed out $2,000 to do that on Vancouver Island.
Me too. I'd be there right beside you. Like, oh yeah, I'd be all in on this. They could have made some money.
They could have made $1 million eradicating those deer. But whatever, man. This is how the government works, and it's, I don't want to go on about it, but it's just, to me, it is absolutely fascinating how time after time after time people make the same mistakes over and over again. Like the Trans Mountain Pipeline, I think we were talking earlier. A private company was going to build that pipeline in Western Canada. I think it's from the oil sands to the coast of British Columbia or something like that. And they were going to build it to no tax, not $1 to the taxpayer. It was all going to be built as per standards. The Trudeau Liberals, I know this is shocking, get involved in it, and now it's going to be $40 billion by the time it's done. Borrowed money at interest to the taxpayer. I mean, this is...
Yeah, and it's still not done.
Yeah. And they're like, wait a minute, maybe there's another way that costs us nothing. We could make money. It's like, oh, no.
Let me meddle in there.
That's hate speech.
Completely screw everything up.
Yeah, that's hate speech. Okay, let's move on. Another story that was really interesting is... our friends over at Polysys, they rarely take any time off. They're always flinging poop, right? Like some kind of circus animal. And they were doing it over Christmas.
Yeah.
And one of the things they commonly shoot themselves in the foot. And what they like to say is, like, oh no, we don't want to ban all guns. They keep trying to defend themselves so that they don't get the entire firearm owning community angry at the same time. So like, no, we never ever want to ban all guns. But anyway, you've got a little bit of dialogue from them that just shows exactly the mask slipped again.
Yeah, well, they were tweeting, what's happened to the assault weapons ban. Well, the assault style firearms ban, what they're referring to was the May 2020 gun ban. That's happened. We've challenged it in court. Like that happened almost 4 years ago now. Then, of course, with C21, we saw the freeze of handgun sales. And now they're still going back asking, where's the rest? Where's more? What more can we ban? C21 also saw the ban of any future semi-auto models. So, they're still clinging on to that. And I think hunters should really take note, because every firearm that is of a caliber suitable for hunting, that is either non-restricted or was previously non-restricted, is a hunting firearm. It is a hunting gun. So you should take notice, because they are absolutely gunning for everybody's firearms. And they won't stop with that.
Yeah. Well, yeah. And you know what else is, I was looking through their feed. I hadn't looked at it throughout the holidays, but I looked through their feed And they're, again, right, they're always they said the gun lobby was basically spreading misinformation. I know we've heard this from them so many times, that hunting guns were being banned, and that's not true.
Yeah, they put it in brackets. Not true.
Not true. And it's like, okay, well, the 1908 Brazilian Mauser bolt action, 100-year-old bolt action rifle, not suitable for hunting. That's not a hunting gun. You know, the Montana ranch rifle, not a hunting gun. The Ruger No. 1 single shot, that's not for hunting. Any of the Mauser actions, nope. The Parker Hale rifles, bolt action, nope. Those aren't hunting guns. Not true. Gun lobby misinformation. You know, it's either you laugh or you get completely enraged. So I choose to laugh at it. All right.
Yeah.
Oh, and you know, one more thing. Interesting is that when you look at groups like Poly and they say we don't want to ban all guns, and then they turn around and they talk about banning hunting rifles, which of course, if you ban one bolt action rifle, the RCMP can go and ban any bolt action rifle as being a variant of that. We only have about, I don't know, 2,200 examples of that, right? It's not even like it happened once and we keep trying to leverage that. But it's interesting, and it's really hard to get the message out to hunters. It's like, yeah, once we're all gone, the black rifle people and the handgun people, you are next. And one of the a lot of hunters are like, well, they'd have to really justify taking bolt action rifles. Well, I'll tell you this. One of the reasons why it's so easy to beat up on black rifle owners or handgun owners is because you see handgun violence in urban centers. Then you see, in Canada, it's extremely rare, but let's say in the United States, you see quite a few mass shootings, and they use semi-automatic rifles, and a whole whack of them are with AR15s. Nowhere near the majority. The majority of mass shootings in the United States are committed with handguns, but whatever, right? We'll just go along with this narrative for now. So it's very easy to turn that on people that are sport shooters or handgun owners. And you're thinking, well, and the hunters are sitting back and they're thinking, well, we're completely fine. Those guys are just bringing the heat on us anyway with their black rifles and their handguns. It's like, well, wait till we're all gone, because here's the thing. Do you think it's easy for the government and the media to paint gun owners as dangerous because of all that, because of, and link criminal activity with licensed gun owners? How hard is it going to be to start convincing those same Canadians that bought that line that hunting is absolutely cruel and unnecessary? All they need to do is show some hunting videos of animals of errant shots even, right? Wounded animals or animals getting shot in the face or whatever, or in the entrails, right? Having their guts spill out. And you think that a few videos floating around like that won't turn Canadians against hunting and think it's an archaic, barbaric practice? Absolutely. That propaganda machine is going to get turned on the hunters next. Mm-hmm. I don't know. It's like, I don't know. I just think that a lot of people don't realize that, how this game is played. We know that game inside out because we're playing it every day for coming up on a decade, right?
Yeah.
And everyone that was fighting this before us too, for 2 other decades. Anyway, just I don't think that should be ignored. All right, next. Tim Thurley, our good friend Tim Thurley, did a piece on readtheline.ca. Why don't you tell us about it? It was pretty good.
Yeah, this is a really great article. And I'm just going to read just a very quick phrase right from the beginning, and then I'll give you a rundown of what he wrote about. It says here, the increasing radicalism of anti-gun groups and the government's insistence on placating them at the cost of alienating gun users is just destroying Canada's gun compromise, and nobody is going to like the consequences. And what he's talking about here, this speaks to the thing I always call the social contract that gun owners have with the government. We decided a while back we'd accept certain restrictions around guns. They can be inherently dangerous in the wrong hands, so we see that. We'd follow the laws, even if some of them are ridiculous. We'd store and transport our guns safely. We'd do all of the things, and in return, the government would leave us alone. That's sort of been the understanding and the agreement and the way it's gone for decades, and for the most part, it's worked relatively well. But then you get this liberal government that feeds off the radicals in the anti-gun lobbies who get even more radical as time goes on. And this is exactly what we were just talking about, how it's gone from, the scary black rifles to the handguns, creeping into the hunting rifles. In fact, C-21, the amendments that had to be withdrawn were basically a hunting gun ban. And watch for those to come back if they do what they say they're going to do and resurrect CFAC. So it's pretty obvious what the end goal now. And he even has a quote there from the co-founder of Doctors for Protection from Gun Owners, or whatever it's called, Dr. Nash. And, you know, the mask slipped, or the curtain was sort of drawn back, however you want to say that. But that famous saying that she said where, you know, it's the guns, ban civilian ownership of guns. Like, it's been pretty clear that that is the end goal. And there's, you know, they're less able to deny that as time goes on. One last point. Back in 1995, during C68 debate, Heidi Ratjen, who's a spokesperson for Police Souvien, said at that time that if C68 passed without major amendment, that they'd be done, that they would no longer fight for federal legislation, that they were happy with that, and that's what it was. And here we are going into 2024, and they're screaming from the rooftops, lighting their hair on fire to ban hunting rifles. Like, you know, this is what he's talking about throughout this article, is how they get progressively more radical in their demands, because every little bit you give them, they just want more and more. And the problem with this, the danger, is gun owners, you know, they comply with the laws. We are law-abiding people. We are peaceful people. And what's going to happen eventually is this is going to lead to non-compliance. And that's dangerous, because that's lawlessness, and it's bad for society. So Tim kind of writes this, you know, it's sort of foreshadowing what could happen in the future, and nobody really wants that. And I think, you know, that's important. It's an important piece, because he's saying, like, hey, you keep pushing these people and pushing them. You break the social contract. You keep coming after them and taking their stuff. Meanwhile, violent crime is going on unabated. And eventually there's going to be consequences to this. People are going to stop complying with these laws. And that's bad. Nobody should really want that.
Yeah.
So,
well, that's good insight.
Yeah, really good article.
And interestingly enough, if you remember in our hearing, I think Solomon Friedman had talked about that you know, agreement, that implicit agreement. And I mean, it wasn't a written agreement, but I think all laws are kind of an implicit deal between the citizenry and the government. When citizens say we want Canada to be safer, government is supposed to provide that leadership where they're like, okay, well, we can't do this because that's unreasonable, but we're going to do this. And they have to always temper what they're doing, or we'll just end up living in an open air prison. But I think Solomon Friedman brought that up, and it was the government's lawyer. Well, I don't know if it was McKinnon or not, but he said, there's no deal with gun owners.
Yeah.
Right? You were there.
I was there, and it's like, you know, these people, it's difficult, because being a gun owner it's not easy. It's not easy to become a gun owner. It's difficult to maintain being a gun owner. There's a lot of rules and restrictions. Canada has some of the most strictest regime of gun control in the world. And to hear somebody, you know, that elitist, smug, just dismissive nature of his comments, it's like, yeah, that's the problem. Is if we don't have a deal, then what incentive is there really to follow along with this stuff, right?
Well, I think that what happens is, as these people, these elitists, they're in their little bubble, right? And they're just like, oh, let them eat cake. And it's like, well, there's a lot of people out there, and they're trying to live their lives. You keep stepping into their lives for no reason. Like, they haven't done anything to have you want to intervene in their lives. And now you're outraged that they're like trying to say, well, wait a minute, maybe you should think about this. Like, who are you to tell me to think about that? And that's there. You know, I think the government is doing that, not to veer out of our lane, but the government's doing that on a lot of different fronts right now, and that's why people are getting angry. And it's just amazing to me how hard-headed people like, you know, the Attorney General's folks that defended the government in our lawsuit, how out of touch, how disconnected they are from reality. You know, it's like there's you're dealing with law-abiding people that work and have half of their earnings taken by force from them to pay for you, for your salary, and to keep, you know, so that you can continue to build castles on Parliament Hill, $10 billion renovations to you know, Center Block, you know, build your little empires. That's great. But the people have to get their other half. And part of that is just stay out of my life.
Yeah.
And they just won't listen. And That's why you have people talking in such a frustrated tone, I think, a lot of times, like we heard, right? When Bill C-21 became law, we heard a lot of frustration, and that's where it's coming from. So to all the people that might be offended by what they're hearing, it's like, it's not for no reason. It's not like, there's 2.3 million Canadians sitting there. It's like, everything's going so great. I just need a reason to be mad. It's like, no, there's a lot of reason, and it's good reason. So I don't know where that goes eventually. Hopefully this government will be gone. Like if you remember, there was a big Western separation. I know we're kind of getting off, but this is the podcast. We get to talk a little bit, getting off topic. But if you remember, just before Harper won his first mandate, there was a big Western separation thing going on, a big movement, and it was actually gaining some traction. And then Harper came to power because people were so sick of the ridiculousness of the centrist party in Canada starting to pull left, and people are tired of it. Then Harper got in for whatever, I think he was there 7.5 years, 8 years. Yeah.
Almost 10 years, Stephen. Yeah, Conservatives ruled for almost 10 years.
But then that calmed down because life started working for everyone again, and times were good. Then Trudeau gets in, and he's like, I'm going to pistol whip the West. I'm going to take their stuff. I'm going to call them names. And then I'm going to say, I never called anybody names. Like, just act like a hyper hypocritical sociopath, right? Nonstop. And now here we are, hitting 8 years. And people are like, holy man, people are getting desperate to get rid of these people. And it's funny because the elitists like Trudeau and the people that work for the Attorney General of Canada and, Lametti, the lame Eddie, the old Attorney General of Canada, like it's wild. They just don't get it. It's just interesting to me.
Well, there's some fresh polling that was out today. I was reading it actually, and it was polling Canadians asking, when do you want the next federal election? Do you want it now? Do you want it sometime in 2024?
Yesterday.
Or do you want to wait until the next scheduled federal election, which would be in October of 2025? And it was like the overwhelming majority of Canadians want an election now, not even later in 2024, but right now. So I don't know. I think it'll be difficult to quiet those voices. But yeah, I think people have had enough. And all this kind of craziness that we're talking about is why,
Yeah. Anyway, all right. The last thing I wanted to bring up today was there's still calendars left, right?
Yeah. Yeah. By the way, I wanted to mention how nice you look in that new hoodie. You've got one of those brand new hoodies on. I've got one as well. I'm not wearing it now, but I love that color combination. I wasn't totally sold on it, but seeing it, I think it looks great, and we can barely keep them on the shelves. But yes. So anyways, kudos to your new hoodie. But yes, there are calendars left. They're a limited number. They will not be restocked once they're sold out. They're sold out. Don't forget, those are like a little free ticket into contest draws that we do every month. So you can get in on that. So make sure you head over to the store, and all the funds raised from selling those calendars, goes directly back into the CCFR Women's Program and helps us support range days across the country to introduce new voting women to the shooting sports. So very important.
Right. Important program. And I think we did over 50 Ladies' Day events in 2023, which I mentioned in the monologue because I went through what we did just last year. So great cause. And oddly enough, I think this hoodie was an accident. It was Staffer Steve wanted this in gold, but our printer was like, don't use gold ink because it cracks and like the shiny stuff. But then
it gets brittle.
Yeah, but then this came and it was like, this is almost like just an off kind of coyote brown kind of, but a little bit more gold. Anyway, I wasn't sure about it myself when I got it, and I'm like, this is awesome.
Oh, yeah. I love it. I wasn't too sure about it either when I saw it mocked up virtually, but I was there at the warehouse when they came in after they were printed, and I was like, oh, these are beautiful. I need one right now. So, I really, really like it. And it's just something a little different than the typical, black, red, white, gray of CCFR colors. I really like it. Great design, Steve.
Yeah. Yeah. It was, I think it's a hit. I really like it. And by the way, I got my care package.
Oh, good.
Black and gray. This is the coolest T-shirt. I don't know. There we go. It's the Firearm Rights or Human Rights, but this is in the stonewashed premium tee.
Yeah. So I like we've got that t-shirt comes in a variety of different colors. Some of them are just like flat, regular colors. And then some of them are that kind of stonewashed look. I love it. It's almost like a weathered, cool look. So we've got that one color so far. Watch for, in the coming month or so, watch for the t-shirts to come out in a variety of other stonewashed colors. But I love it. I love the look. It's like a premium t-shirt. It's not your typical cheap, run-of-the-mill t-shirt. Just really, really nice.
Yeah, awesome. The new stuff is really nice.
Yeah.
So thank you to everyone that has made a purchase of some of the new swag at the store. We really appreciate the help. It helps the CCFR a lot more now than it used to.
Yes, it does.
For the other stuff. So really appreciate all the support. Okay, I think we covered everything.
All right, we did it.
Awesome. Well, we'll see you next time.
All right, we'll see you then.
All right, that's going to do it for episode 157 of the CCFR Radio Podcast. Thanks, everyone, for coming back. Make sure you share this podcast. Get other people involved because there's still more fighting to come. Who knows how long we're going to have this Liberal government for. Could go on for another year, could go on for another 2 years. I wouldn't expect it would go on for anything past a year, but we don't know. We're not in control of that. But anyway, I just want to say thanks to everyone for supporting the CCFR, for allowing us, looking at that list of things that we did over the last year. We couldn't have done any of that stuff without all of you supporting us. And you're probably bored of me hearing me say it, but it is an absolute privilege to represent all of you, whether it's in the Senate, whether it's arguing with Tlaib Nur Mohammed, right, at the Public Safety Committee in the House. That stuff's uncomfortable, but I have to tell you how grateful I am that you allow me to do that on your behalf. And it is a great honor. It's tedious and it's stressful, but I'll tell you, it helps to be able to fight at some level. And it's because of you that we can do all these things. So thank you. All right, that's it for this episode. I guess we will see you in the next one in 2 weeks. We're back on our regular schedule. All right, thanks everyone. Take care, and we'll see you soon.
This is another episode of the CCFR Radio Podcast. Remember, if you don't stand up for your own ability to own and use firearms, who will? Join the CCFR or donate right now at www.firearmrights.ca.